am Rachel Dyachenko, and I am serving in Chisinau, Moldova with Word Made Flesh as the field director and communications partnerships. And the verse Jesus wept, a former colleague of mine used to say it's like the shortest verse in the Bible, John 21:17, but very powerful. It's when his friend Lazarus had passed away. And we had a moment, maybe obvious, maybe not, but that's kind of a before and after moment for our community, which is February 24th, 2022, when the unthinkable happened and all the soldiers built up along the border in Ukraine actually invaded Ukraine. And I remember that morning because we heard the news, and I dropped off my daughter at kindergarten, and I told one of the staff there, and she was shocked because she hadn't heard yet. And when I went to our community center where we serve kids in an after-school program, we start every day with prayer, and so we already had a space and a time to be together. And I just remember just crying because this was the worst possible scenario that we could have imagined. We knew there was something happening, but this was the worst. And I remember, crying as we prayed, and not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of deep grief. And I've learned in these last years, I'm thankful that I've learned before this, that tears are a gift, and they are meant to move us somewhere. They tell us something. And just allowing that space for our staff and team to cry together during our morning prayer was a beautiful moment of being able to lament together. I think there's something paradox about grief and mourning and lament and sadness, is that it is so closely connected to joy. I mean, our ability to feel, as a human, we're able to feel love and joy, we're able to feel suffering, and when we cut ourselves off from feeling, we can't feel the good or the bad. And that is definitely a tendency and a temptation in this work with coming up against trauma and hard things all the time, is just to shut down and not feel. But what I've learned is to not be afraid of grief. I think there's a fear that lament and tears can just be like you turn on a faucet and you won't be able to turn it off. But it's more like a wave, and like the waves on the shore, they come and they recede. And it's okay to feel those. And actually, it's after allowing grief to come through, there's actually space to experience also joy and hope. So when I see incredible injustice and suffering, I think that very connected to grief is also anger. And I think about the fact that as children, when we see toddlers, what are the emotions that most come up the most is, like tears or anger. They're having a fit. And then as we grow older, we learn how to suppress those two emotions, sadness and anger. But I think that God is not afraid of those, and that's kind of what I've learned in this work, is that not only is he not afraid of those emotions, like I can take those emotions to him. And I have this image of me pounding God on the chest because I am very angry about a lot of things that are happening in the world right now. And he just holds me and allows me to cry and beat him on the chest. Another practice that has been very important and life-giving that I invite people to do is just take scripture and just read it and pray it, especially right now with having come in contact with people experiencing the horrors of war. Even my own brother-in-law is fighting on the front lines. is being able to pray scripture and just imagine those words for the people that I know right now suffering. So I was just recently praying Psalm 112, and it was just came off the page, good will come to him who is generous and lends freely. He will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. And this fear of bad news has become very familiar to me. And just to pray with that and just to pray over that, help us to trust, Lord. May my sister-in-law not live with fear of bad news. Help her to trust in you. And that's kind of a practice that has become meaningful during this time, praying with the Psalms. Even though we're far away, the thought I have around grief and lament is bring that to others, and don't be afraid to just sit with each other and be with each other in that, because grief can be so isolating. So don't forget to come together in times of hard things that need to be grieved together.